On Reddit, a user posted a story about racism he was dealing with in his family. He is an Asian man married to a white woman, and he gets constant harassment from his white sister in law. This all came to a breaking point when the sister in law said a racist Asian joke. His wife asked him to make up with her family for the sake of peace. I use the wrong piece there. I'm sorry. I use PIEEC and PEACE. All right, never mind. But
You got one piece on the mind, eh?
always. Anyway, uh, his wife asked him to make up with her family for the sake of peace, but the Reddit user refused. How far should you be expected to make compromises in a relationship? What accommodations are reasonable to you? Is there a point where compromise becomes abuse? So I'm gonna post all this in the Twitch chat in a second. You can see like this thread, but yeah, I think this is really fascinating, and I think so. We're gonna be using this incident as a jumping off point, like talking about like what happened here, and then moving that to like just relationships in general, and how much you should be expected to change and to alter yourself, and to swallow shit basically for a significant other. Yeah, so we'll go into a detail about exactly everything that happened here. So why don't we get started with the introductions? Mad Latin, give it a try.
So my tolerance on this topic is like very short. As a person of color in this country, having dated a variety of individuals, I have experienced this firsthand and personally repeatedly. I don't think I've probably had one relationship where something like this didn't happen, where there wasn't like a racist family member, racist parents, or just something really off-putting that occurred. So I have a particularly short temper on this in this arena, and so my compromise line is pretty short. And I think it's because I just, I'm tired of dealing with this type of nonsense. So I mean, it just kind of depends on what your like your personal sense of pride on some level, your sense of self, like what you are willing to tolerate, and whether you feel like you're being taken advantage of. And I feel like the more you experience this type of thing, where there's like a racist individual who is talking down to you and treating you terribly, you're more likely to just say, "Nah, I'm done." So that's my take.
Okay, let's go to Nathan.
Yeah. Oh, hello. Can you hear me? Okay, there you go. Yeah. The situation is unfortunate. You said they're married, right? So you can't just. It's not like a boyfriend girlfriend situation where you can just leave quickly or anything like that. And I've assumed that they want to stay together and all that stuff. I can see both the wife and the husband's perspective. I'm Asian, and if every single time I go to a partner's house, they gotta say something to me about being Asian, I'm sure it'll get uncomfortable to a point. I would hope in that kind of situation that the partner would be able to tell their family, hey, don't say this kind of stuff. And frankly, if they're not willing to do that, I question how good of a partner that individual is. But maybe they did, and the family still does it anyway. If I was in the partner's position, I would not expect the husband to just roll back and take it. He has the full right to disassociate from that part of the family. He doesn't have to deal with them. He doesn't have to be their friend. He doesn't have to eat dinner with them. That's how you can get some peace, I guess. I'm sure he's already tolerated a bunch, so I think there is a limit to how much individuals can tolerate. And recently I know some people who in their relationship, one of their families became a problem, and it's unfortunate. I don't think the family should really dominate the relationship between the two individuals, but I can recognize that, family plays a huge role. And if a family is constantly causing trouble, unless both of the individuals are trying to not associate with the family, it's going to cause trouble for the two people. So it's an unfortunate situation, but I don't think that the woman should be demanding of the husband my use of the word woman there was mean. Hold on, the wife. The wife should be demanding that the husband like just take it. She should understand that he has his limits.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Ninetales.
Yeah, so the first thing that I wanted to work through, because I haven't actually thought about this topic very much at all, like family and what it all means and stuff like that. The first one I want to work through is like, should family stick by you through anything? That kind of like trope. Um, and I think that's ideal that they do that, but I don't think people should feel pressure to like take, not necessarily take someone's side, but like show support for them. Like, I don't know. I think that, you know, it might be ideal for some child molester to have support from their family or something, just as a really crude example. But at the same time, I wouldn't blame somebody for not supporting their own family member after finding that out about them. So I think that's a crucial thing there. Another thing is that I don't think you should expect people to take your side. I think that people either will or they won't. Now it's going to be very difficult, and I'm not going to deny that when it's your partner and you know they're not taking your side. That's going to make you feel very isolated and stuff like that. But then you have some questions to ask, like, why aren't they taking my side if I feel like I'm justified in this, blah, blah, blah. This person didn't entirely feel justified, so I don't know how much they were actually demanding their partner to take their side. But the important thing is that they did in the end. And that's what I think you can kind of expect is that whoever is being the asshole there will probably show their true colors in the end. Um, and whoever's not will come around and like try to apologize and stuff like that. And you know, oh, sorry about that. I need the door open sometimes because it gets way too hot in here. But yeah, they'll come around and you know, people's minds will change. So I think while it makes sense to want people to be on your side, especially when they're closer to you at first, the better thing to do is just kind of stand your ground, make your case, and wait for them to see what's really going on. Just from personal experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, I think beyond the racism, it comes down to a lack of respect. The poster had opened up with other situations in which they'd felt disrespected prior to the flat out racist remark that was made. I agree with Nathan that he should be able to disassociate himself with the family if they're not willing to ultimately respect this person. I don't think you can force people to change, but I think that giving someone the option to still, I don't know, in regards to the wife, I guess, to respect her and her choices, maybe if there can come be some respect within the family that he wouldn't have to completely disassociate himself. But if not, I would totally not see a problem with that, with him doing that. Ninetales brought up like a child molester and support with family. So I agree with her not to expect anyone to take your side. As I've talked about before on here, my daughter is a child abuse survivor. And unfortunately, those are the people that I had to disassociate myself from. And I had to go down through all the harms, the benefits. I mean, you know, I'm essentially taking away an entire side of family to my children, right? But it came down to the fact that they couldn't stop making comments that would hint at my daughter not being believable, and without like, you know, flat out saying it. And it just comes down to complete disrespect. And then of course there's harm when it comes to racism, and there's harm when it comes to not believing a child survivor of abuse. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, Kevin FM.
Right. So I took an opportunity to just really scan through this piece from Board Panda, and honestly, like just based on the circumstances that the couple found themselves in that story, you know, and based on the country where we all reside, you know, it's going to be a little tricky to navigate, you know, relationships where you have basically partners of a different race enter into a marriage, because then you're going to have to deal with family members who may be bigoted towards said spouse. So I have a really good friend who is of Indian descent, and she married a white guy, and her parents, basically is very bigoted towards him. This is in the UK, but they believe that she should have married someone, from India as well. So while I haven't directly experienced anything like this, I've seen multiple people in my life suffer through something like that, even going so far as like some of my cousins marrying people of color and having to deal with basically a racist uncle, having some shit to say about it. So, there's going to be obvious tension that pops up there. And then, of course, there's also going to be like obvious tension in terms of discrimination that the spouse has to put up with as a result of who they are. So do I think that it would be okay for them to put up with a whole lot of racism? No. And really, I think that what it boils down to is that their spouse has to be understanding, when their significant other tells them that they're going through, racial discrimination from, his or her family. And, there has to be a level of understanding in terms of, having their back when that happens. Now, there may be instances where, the spouse may not be justified in thinking that, but that's not really my judgment call to make. Based on the story, he was definitely justified in being angry at the racist sister-in-law. And so in that regard, they shouldn't have to put up with that kind of stuff forever. And, as the spouse, it's also your responsibility to make your feelings known and tell your family members to stop being bigoted douches, or else there has to be some kind of distancing.
So, let me give a bit more details as to the story. So, like I said, the poster is an Asian man who has a white wife, and this is his interactions with her family. So his sister-in-law. So the Asian man is a chef, and he works at a Asian restaurant, and his sister-in-law is a chef that works at some high-scale, upscale, fine dining place, right? And when the Asian poster is at his father and mother-in-law's house, right, making dinner, like making food for them, because he's a chef, why not? You're gonna help prepare for dinner. When she's doing that, the sister-in-law, the other chef, would come in and would say, well, you're not doing this and this right. Like, I prefer that you do it this way, right? And basically, the Asian poster, he was, whatever, okay, sure, I'm gonna do it my way, but, mostly swallowing that. One day, she comes in with the same shit, telling him how he's doing everything wrong. He decides not to swallow it. He responds, saying that, like, he's a chef just like her, and, he deserves the same amount of respect, and he knows what he's doing. And she responds back, I got the quote here. She responds back to him, laughing, making Kung Pao chicken at some Chinese restaurant doesn't count. Which is pretty fucking racist. And the mother-in-law, father-in-law, sister-in-law, and wife are there. And the father-in-law laughs at this. The mother-in-law freaks out, like, what the fuck? Child, why did you do this? Then the Asian poster, like, leaves with his wife. And the whole situation blows up. Like, it was fighting back and forth. The father takes the side of the racist daughter in this, and the mother and the wife, the white wife, they are taking the poster's side, like because the shit was racist. But the wife wanted him to apologize, the Asian man to apologize, uh, because he like told, I forget what he said to them after that, but he wanted to apologize for getting offended, just so they can make peace. Afterwards, though, the sister-in-law, um, calls him up and calls up the wife and says a racist slurs about her husband. So she's like, "Fuck you," and this story gets out, so it gets public, right? It gets out, and word gets back to the sister-in-law's restaurant, and she gets demoted and possibly on the chopping block to get fired for all of these things. And fuck her. So I hope this it helps a bit. Again, the link is in chat. If you want to see that whole story. If it was a little hard to follow me, I hope I did it in some sort of easy way. But okay, open to the panel. Someone's typing. If you could mute yourself when you're typing.
Yeah. I think ultimately it comes down to whether the wife is willing to, disassociate herself from her family, whether the husband is okay with completely disassociating himself and his wife not, or whether they have to split up. So I know personally for me, if the family was not willing to apologize to my husband for being flat out racist and not and anything that has occurred, I probably would easily cut them off. But then again, my family and I aren't too close, so maybe that's a little bit of a factor in why I feel the way that I do. I guess I don't know. It also, depends how strong the marriage is, and again, the bond between the family and the wife, right?
So you're saying for you, there's not like a great cost because you're not really close to people, so you're not sure how you would react maybe if you were closely tied to like a family.
Yeah, I'd like to still think that I probably would, especially if it came down to something being racist. But I'm in there. I do have family I'm close to, and I probably would cut them off. But I also think we're close because they aren't that way. So, you know,
It would be really, really hard. So like if it's someone that I was like really, really close to, it would be a situation for me where I would have to take a few days to process like the choice I would have to eventually make. But I can't imagine not cutting someone off if they were behaving in a way that was destructive to someone else, especially in like an outward way like that. Like actively hurting someone that I love would just not be tolerable for me. And I mean, it's kind of, I don't know if it's tricky to say this or not, but like I would have this expectation that my significant other would respond in kind. Like if my significant other chose their family over me when their family did this type of thing, I would have no way of maintaining the relationship. I could not feel like some sense. I wouldn't feel like I could trust them anymore. I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about my problems. There'd be like a lot of anguish there. And I mean, there'd be just hard decisions that would have to be made. But I mean, I know what the answer is. It's just working myself to a point where I was able to manage that, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, sorry, that you reminded me of a study that I had read in regards to like microaggressions and the mental uh, turmoil, or what it does to your mental well-being. And yeah, I guess I was just a thought I had. Sorry, I
Yeah.
was just thinking about how
I
like actually that's what it was. It could be instill kind of like a form of trauma within communication skills and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot to consider.
I
Yeah.
recently had a birthday with my family, and like it was basically ruined right off the bat because like I've been transitioned for 2 years. My family's known that I planned on transitioning for a lot longer, and they still have the habit of referring to my male pronouns and calling me my dead name. And the funny thing is that like all that confirms to me is that behind my back they're still calling me that, and they're still thinking of me that way. And knowing that they're doing that means I also can't feel comfortable around them. And going further with like the comfort thing, I think comfort within a family is like a critical thing. Um, like my mom's boyfriend, after I came out, but before I started hormones or anything, hit me after we had a small argument, and I don't take physical abuse very well, but like definitely like the people who became violent with me after I came out, like even if I had like instigated it, I can't trust that they didn't attack me because of how I was now. And like I've never been a fighter. Like I've never been like, oh, I'm gonna fight this person back, beat them up for like trying to punch me. Ugh. It feels so alien to me for someone to be like that. For guys who are like that, like good for you. It's not me. So like, yeah. So that just hurt me and made me scared. I ran away from that situation. Didn't actually run, but I left because I didn't want to fight him. But now, like, I literally can't see my mom if she's with him. I literally can't feel okay around him. Even if my partner was there and I knew he'd stand up for me, like I don't even want a violent situation. So yeah, I don't know how to even fix that at this point. It's basically like a schism that's always going to exist.
Do you you don't have to answer this. Just not to pry or anything, but so you still talk to your mom? Like
Oh yeah.
okay.
It's hard though. Like it's hard to want to talk to my family because it hurts more than like words can describe if they call me by my dead name or something. And like at first I was able to tell myself it's just by accident, but they've had so long to like change the way they think of me and stuff like that, and it just shows that they don't. So at this point, like my desire to actually talk to them is fading away pretty quickly.
Yeah. And it takes time to process
yeah.
that, I guess. Right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna throw something in, but it's irrelevant to what you were. Well, it's not irrelevant, but I want you to follow through with your line of inquiry because I'm a doofus and I jump in when I don't need to.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, it's really hard. Like, a- so a relationship like this is abusive in nature, and like escaping an abusive relationship is particularly difficult because you have like this emotional attachment to the abuser, and like it takes a certain level of abuse before you realize that there's nothing there. This emotional relationship that you've perceived is one-sided, and thus you need to like cut the cord. um but that, I mean, that's not even like the deepest part of it, because like when it comes to the like referring to you by your dead name, Nine Tails, or like for me it would have been like the equivalent of like my first girlfriend had a grandfather who would refer to the freckles on her face as N-word kisses, right? And like right, exactly, like it was really bad.
Hmm.
And her whole family still treated him as family for a very long time. And like there's like this thing where um it becomes like the pressure to change the family of your significant other starts making the relationship even more and more abusive, because you start having a stake in seeing these people like change and wake up. So like for me, I stayed in that relationship longer than I should have, because they were actually making great strides on the whole racism department, and they're actually ostracizing the grandpa, right? But my actual relationship was going south quickly, and like it turned into this huge cluster where we needed to break up, but I was afraid to break up because, well, they're doing so much to, and I mean, I felt like I owed the family because they were doing so much to facilitate the relationship I had. And so like it creates a new dimension and a new way of actually having an abusive relationship, because then you stay in the relationship for like all these random reasons that aren't necessarily connected directly to your relationship. It just like puts these weird outside pressures that shouldn't be there. But I mean, so that was my thought and like my personal experience with this, because yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, I was reading through the actual Reddit post, and damn, shit got real fucking crazy in the update, in the edits. Like, holy shit. Essentially, what I saw was the sister-in-law never learned, and she was getting demoted. She called the wife and was like saying, "Oh, your Asian slur husband's getting me fired," all this bullshit. Eventually, the father-in-law called him and threatened him to delete the post or it ain't gonna be pretty or whatever. And then they told the mother-in-law, and then she didn't know that. And after she heard that, she heard her walk away from the phone and start screaming at the father-in-law. Essentially, the father-in-law is and we're usually a political podcast, but it turns out politics plays a role in this too. The father-in-law is a Republican, and apparently after 2016, according to the updates, he went further to the right, and the white and the mother-in-law is like a standard Democrat. So, I mean, that kind of explains why he's so stubborn to be racist, shit. And yeah, based on the sister-in-law was essentially blacklisted from the restaurants because nobody wants that shit. Nobody likes her. And she's thinking about selling her house and moving. Ultimately, if it was me in the husband's position, I would say so be it. You talk shit, you didn't learn. Cope, bitch. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, so I just want to push back on this a little bit. I mean, politics can be an indicator, especially recently because we've had some particularly racist politicians on the right. But no, I mean, I've had relatives who are, on the left who are extremely transphobic, relatives who are extremely racist, in a different than traditional way. Or not like white majority racist, but different kind of racist. And this comes from, so like it doesn't necessarily come from entirely a political lens. Like you're not necessarily going to be just safe because the family votes D, and you're not necessarily going to be automatically rejected as the family votes. I mean, now it feels a lot more like that, obviously. But no, I mean, I've definitely encountered.
I mean, have you seen Get Out?
I can't watch horror movies. I'm not gonna lie. I have a hard time with horror movies. The heart just can't deal with it. But
It's
I
not
definitely
really
watched clips
horror.
and a plot synopsis, which was good enough for me. I got the plot.
I still
Felt
haven't
right.
seen it, so don't spoil it for me.
Oh my god, Prime, please watch it.
I know.
It's phenomenal, but didn't mean to derail.
Well, so much. Yeah, like it was not just a derailment. It's like the train's gone. I don't even know where the train went. Like what was I?
You were.
It was kind of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to help you out here. You said that it adds a whole new dimension when just kind of where you got cut off, but fuck, I'm sorry, I don't know where you were going with that.
Okay, I think I can help you find the train because basically you were talking about how, when it's not a guarantee that just because the wife or girlfriend's family votes with the D means you'll be safe, etc.
Yeah. So like actually some of my best relationships ended up being families that were actually very politically diverse. And I even had the situation in a relationship once where like one of the parents was like very not happy about me, and the other parent said, I will divorce you if you keep talking about this. Like I am not okay with what you said right now, and you just need to get over this one way or the other. And like that was like this moment of like, okay, this is like it was like my first, it was like an awakening, right? Like, wow, there's like it's possible to have this family dynamic where like one parent can be like terrible, and the other parent's going to say like, no, this is terrible. I'm going to correct this behavior. And yeah, it was nice. I don't know. It was a good. That was like a positive experience, and that was from a mixed political family. So like, I don't want to like get too political with it. I understand that politics does have an impact for sure, but not necessarily.
No, and I
I
definitely
think
understand that because honestly, my memory was jogged a little bit because I kind of went through a similar experience with my own marriage, not in the racial sense, but, I'm in a mixed weight marriage. So basically what that means is that, my spouse faced a lot of discrimination based on her size, and that was mainly from my mom. So, over the years, I had to basically cut my mom off from communication, be like, no, this shit's not okay. You have to cut this out. And I mean, eventually she got it, but, it just took a long time of just having to, continually be like, no, I'm not fucking with you until you, get your shit together, because otherwise this isn't going to happen. Because microaggressions about, for example, saying to my spouse, "Oh, it's a shame that you weigh so much because you have such a pretty face," and stuff like that. It's just like,
Is that micro? It doesn't sound very micro. It sounds pretty macro.
well, yeah, it's pretty macro, but I mean, it's a fucked up situation. So in that respect, I personally get it, but I also, I've seen it with my cousins where my uncle was lamenting to me because, he was like, "Oh, well, my children have called me racist, and my son-in-law, who's African American, called me racist. But I'm not racist." I'm like, "Buddy, are you sure about that?" Like, he's one of those kinds of Trump Republicans who, thinks that the election was stolen and believes that
Mhm.
Obama wasn't born in America, like, you know, off into the stratosphere. So, you know, I can imagine, there were probably similar conversations to what Mad Lad has gone through, where, or the original poster has gone through, where it's like, no, Dad, you gotta cut this shit out, you
Mhm.
know? So I do understand that. And then something which was actually really interesting too, that I picked up in this story, is that in terms of, the pattern of behavior from the sister-in-law, what was actually really interesting to observe is just the fact that, she and the husband were from two diverse culinary backgrounds. She worked at a French establishment, he worked at a Chinese establishment. And, the fact that he was, an Asian man cooking Chinese food and she was a white woman cooking French cuisine, there may be this bias against other types of cultural cuisines that she may have been carrying this whole time, which is probably why she continued to criticize him constantly on his style.
Mhm.
Because, you know, it's actually funny. I did a whole stream on colonialism today. So, um, something that I've seen pop up a little bit is colonialism or imperialism over food. How internationally speaking, there might be different types of cuisines which are more desirable than others. So, I think that something that drives this point home is I saw a clip of Gordon Ramsay trying to cook like Vietnamese cuisine or something like that. He presented it to the Vietnamese or Asian chef, and she just gave him a stank eye like nobody's business because he just did it all wrong, even though he knew, like, even though he thought that he was doing everything right the whole time. And it's just like, no, just because you have your assumptions over, what you may think is the right way to do things isn't necessarily how everyone else does it. So, in looking at this story, I just found that interesting too. And that probably could have been a red flag that, original poster was dealing with this whole time prior to the comment.
Mhm. Yeah. I think the initial point Amanda made was really important. At the core of it is a complete lack of respect from the wife's family. Uh, if I'm trying to imagine myself in the position in the different shoes of these people. If I was in the shoes of the husband, the moment like you're telling me like how to cook, I'll probably take it a few times. Like, okay, but at some point, like the guy, that he's like, I know how to do this. I'm a chef too.
Hmm.
Now, you know, I can tell it was obviously bothering him considering he snapped at her, and that's completely understandable, and I don't blame him whatsoever. Uh, but yeah, the
Well, that's why
sister-in-law made.
So I was
Sorry, go
gonna say
ahead.
that's why you set your boundaries early. Like if you establish your
Mhm.
boundaries early, then you don't have to wait until you're pissed off and then respond in a snappish manner. You can just literally say, like,
Yep.
hey, I cook, you cook. It's cool. My boundary here is that if you talk shit about my cooking, you better be able to back it up, right? Like
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
very straightforward. If you don't set a boundary early on, then it turns into well,
A
the
bigger
types of
problem,
things,
like what
yeah,
happened.
It
like what
seemed like
happened,
he
or
did,
like things I've dealt with too. Actually, I've definitely blown up a few times.
yeah, and it seems like he did set some bound. Like, I mean, he repeatedly requested the critiques to stop,
Mhm.
and it didn't happen.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. That is true. He tried to set the boundaries, but that lack of respect really takes you places. Uh, bad places. It gets you fired eventually. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like there,
whoops, I missed that.
I can't imagine like getting the phone call from the father-in-law saying like, "Oh, you better delete that poster. A whole world of trouble's coming." I would literally say, well, who the fuck are you talking to? What are you gonna do?" Like I remember it was mentioned earlier. Ninetales doesn't like confrontation. For me, I'm 5'2" and I'm full of fucking fury. I love confrontation.
Hey,
Uh,
hey, you're strawmanning me.
Beautiful.
I love you're strawmanning me. I love online confrontations, but I'm
yeah.
talking about fisticuffs.
Yeah. Well, that's understandable. Um, but yeah, like I have a situation where my ex, right? We're still chilling and stuff. Uh, her boyfriend, who well is now her ex-boyfriend, uh, his family was making trouble, like seeing me when they're hanging out and all that stuff. When we're all hanging out as like a group of friends in general, even other friends, and they're like, "Why is what's he doing here?" And they were pretty much implying that she was like cheating on him with me. So I'm just thinking to myself, like, you never fucking met me. How the fuck are you just gonna assume that shit? And also, god damn, you're just like telling your kid, like, she's cheating for sure. And that caused a problem in their relationship, and ultimately they didn't chill out. And it's another situation. The better part about the Reddit story is that the wife, was willing to side with the husband and all that stuff, but families can cause a lot of trouble. And man, I really wanted to have a conversation with like the with the fucking with my friend's family, because like I just wanted to like let them know, like, yeah, I'm not fucking doing nothing. Relax. I mean, I would love to go out with her, but I'm chilling right now. Okay, relax.
It
Yeah.
sounds like. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, only just because I've been waiting to say this for a while. Yeah, so like I live in a particular like I feel like my family's particularly bad for all of this. Like if I had like an interracial spouse, they'd probably be racist as well. And like the worst part is that like they kind of act like this like regal family that could do no wrong. Like they're actually going to like impress the queen one day by being such amazing white people. And like that so literally like if I were to say to them like what you're doing right now is transphobic, they'd be like, oh no, uh your mom, or if I said like to my grandma, my mom, what my mom's doing transphobic, it's like, oh no, your mom actually just doesn't understand or something. It's like, well, yeah, that would have made sense like after the first month, but come on. um and yeah, so it's like it's almost like the culture my family has like reinforces this. Like it's like this internal family culture. I don't know how to else to describe it, but it's like everyone but me is playing this game of trying to get the inheritance from my rich aunt or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
think, like,
I
oh,
I
go ahead.
cannot stand families like that. I mean, just because, it's there's a distinct difference between, actually being nice to someone and putting on airs of civility. Like kind of like when a southerner says, "Oh, bless your heart," they mean, "Oh, go fuck off." It's, so there really is a difference there in that dynamic. So I totally get that.
Yeah,
My
it's
good.
Go ahead, Amanda.
yeah, it sounds like we've all experienced some form of this in one way or another, and had to separate ourselves either from significant other or our family, other than Prime, who hasn't really shared. But it sounds like the panelists anyways have all experienced this, and I do want to clarify that when I said earlier, I don't know for sure if I would leave in this situation. 100%, like this is flat out like straight racism, disrespect. There had been, plenty of communication and whatnot, so I just wanted to clarify that point.
Um, I I don't have a story to share. I don't have one. That's I mean, not unfortunately. I don't want one. But like, yeah, I just don't have this particular experience.
Are you telling me One Piece never covered this?
No, not yet. Well, actually, discrimination. It actually has covered. It's covered pretty much everything, really. But yeah, I don't have a particular story to share on this one. So I'll just be like listening more there. But
my least favorite part, just one more thing about like the families when they're like covering for themselves. My least favorite thing is directly confronting someone about it, and they'll say like objectively, "I'm right." And then they'll say, but in my world, in my bubble, I still believe this. As if that makes it completely okay to still hold the beliefs, even though objectively they're acknowledging that what I'm talking about is absolutely correct. That's my least favorite thing. Okay, we can, sorry. I just want to throw that in there because it just pisses me. Like, it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, okay.
I
Amanda.
was going to say, I didn't hear that they had kids or anything, but I really wonder how, if they would have had kids, how the family would have ended up treating those children. And that probably would have been a huge factor as well here. And, at least I hope it would be with the wife's decision, just considering her own children as well as her husband.
That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
So there are a ton of places we can take this. So the situation itself is just pretty fucked that we brought up. But I do want to like explore relationships in general and how they can be problematic and like how much you should be willing to swallow. I feel like everyone here agrees that compromise is necessary in a relationship, right? Like there's just no two ways about it. You're going to be in different difficult situations and difficult social situations, right? Like you'll have different perspectives on the world, and this will cause friction in maybe some unexpected areas. But when you find those areas, sometimes you either have to back down from whatever is the problem, or say that let's work this out. Let's so I mean, I guess everyone agrees there, right? It's pretty basic stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, mostly. Like I would say like compromise is necessary for a relationship to be successful. But like, so the way I perceive it, like you've got two individuals or however many individuals setting their boundaries, right? And then if the boundaries don't mesh well, then you can compromise if it's not like a touchy subject. But if it's something that's very close to your identity, if it's a big part of what you care about and you can't let it go, then that relationship should probably end, and you should not be trying to compromise and or like cope with the fact that the boundaries aren't going to align.
Yeah, I think the compromising is good as long as it's not compromising your identity, right?
Yeah, agreed. Like 100%, 145% or some 0.56.
Okay, great. But what counts as compromising your identity? If that's a line, and the others can tell me if they disagree with that line.
Okay.
I would say like if we look at the situation, right, and like I think compromise goes too far when the person that's expected to compromise is just like way too uncomfortable for it. Let's say they've already been compromising, already dealing, like for example with our story, the guy was already dealing with shit from the sister-in-law about his cooking, and he already told her relax, and she kept doing it, and then she pulls the racist shit, and that really sets him off the edge. He already been putting up with that shit. He doesn't need to compromise anymore. And if he were to say, apologize for the peace of the family. I think that is too far for him, because I understand that the wife just wants peace in her family, and that's completely reasonable. But this just seems like a situation where it would be most ideal for him,
So
for them to not associate with them. And
that's like
yeah,
experience driven, right? Like, so there's like the racist thing was the punchline to an experience that was underwhelming. So like I would say that we need to divide this up into a bunch of different categories. Like, so identity is one thing that you can refuse to compromise on. If you have a consistent experience of your boundaries being violated, that is that could actually fit into identity as well. But I would say it's like, repeated peppering, attacking your identity, attacking your boundary to the point where you're not willing to. Yeah, go ahead.
I have an example of one that like actually compromised or was willing or trying to compromise my identity. So I went through marriage counseling, and one of the things that my spouse ex-husband had an issue with was that whenever we would get into a fight or argument, I would like have to leave. So like step outside the house, I would walk down the street, I would get in the car, you come back, 10, 15 minutes later. I am ADHD, autistic. There are certain reactions that I have. In order for me to like literally wrap my head around everything, I have to be like away from everything for a few minutes. And my
I
my
feel
spouse,
that.
yeah, and my spouse is someone who had to fix the issue like right away. And so basically it came down to, are you wanting to divorce over the fact that she needs 10 minutes by herself, or can you just, not, or can you just let it go for 10 minutes? And in that situation there was no compromise. I got what I needed. But yeah, sorry.
Well, no, and
that's a fantastic example.
I can
like-
relate to that.
Yeah, like I know I have to leave. There's a conflict. I need to go far, far away. I need to chillax.
Well, just being
for a
on the
little bit.
spectrum, I can understand that in that respect. So spectrum solidarity there.
Yeah, and the thing is like, let's say he was on the spectrum and one of his things was having to fix it right away. Well, then in that situation, we'd both be compromising our identities, and maybe that'd be best to, separate. Obviously, we divorce for other circumstances, but
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, if you can't compromise on a boundary, right, and that boundary that you said is like a part of your identity, then you have to split if you want to have some sort of like chance at a happy relationship later. Like, there's no way of putting this like thing in some sort of box. Like, you can't just like hide it somewhere and like go through cognitive dissonance and just pretend that you're not having this giant problem that exists within your relationship. It only lasts so long, it's temporary, and something bad's going to trigger like all the feelings and all the problems afterwards. I was gonna say so like there's like two ways that your boundaries can be violated, right? Like, you can have like the very big attack on your boundary, or you can have your boundary like constantly being peppered and not respected in like little tiny ways to the point where you are very agitated. So I would say that in terms of exploring what identity is, which is quite subjective, I would say. Like, I think everybody has different things that they value and would want to keep a part of themselves. Like, if someone told me to be with you, you'd have to give up chess, I would say, I think the move I'm going to play here is D4. Like, just like, sorry. It's too much.
I wish I knew that reference, but okay, great.
Fine. It's an old chess joke. I just thought I'd throw it in there. But like, yeah, like if someone like wanted to attack a big part of me, something that I like truly valued and like put on like my intellectual pedestal, I wouldn't be able to stay with them. And my boundary would be then like, you respect the things I do, I'll respect the things that you do. And then if they keep attacking me for this thing they don't like, then it's time to break up.
A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, had a Sorry, I'm looking at chat now. I shouldn't do that. It's been pretty funny. A friend of mine had a girlfriend who hated the fact that one, he played video games, and two, that he liked like anime, right? Uh, it's and it's like it seemed like she was looking down on him, like because like, oh, I'm an adult, right? And as an adult, I'm not I'll participate in these things, right? Um, and he stayed with her, ended up breaking up for other reasons. But like, if I had encountered that, I'd say that would bother me. Like, no, you know what? Why? Like, am I making fun of you or anything that you do, right? Am I make you feel less than for liking the things you do, especially if you're not hurting anyone, right? And to be able to make those comments and expect that I'm going to take it and that we can have a continuous relationship. Like, why? Like, why? It feels like at some point you're kind of like trying to bully them into like what you want them to be, right? It's like, I don't like you for this part of you, and I need to change you. We had a good conversation sometime this week about relationships as well, saying that, you know, if you are trying to change a person within a relationship, like, pull back, right? Like, if you think getting a relationship is as a place to change an individual, like, that is the wrong strategy, and it's just going to lead to heartache and depression and anger, right, and resentment.
I guess it depends on the kind of change that you're seeking, because if it's something like, you know, hey, don't play anime or don't watch anime, that's lame, then, you know, why do you have a problem with that? That's stupid. But I mean, if it's a behavior, like a toxic behavior that you may have or that your family has that, you know, you would want addressed because it's costing you your happiness, then I think that there is an element of give or take that you would need to have in that situation. So, you know, as I said, because I'm on the spectrum, sometimes I just need a moment to like slow things down, just stop the conversation, be like, hey, I need to process, you know, because I misread people sometimes. So, you know, in that respect, it's like there's that accommodation that I'm asking for there, you know, and that just makes communication easier. But, you know, or with the example of my family, you know, if I ask them, hey, can you stop being so fat phobic, please? And they don't want to do that, then if they continue breaching those boundaries, then that's where you just need to, like, you know, distance yourself, you know, and make it clear you don't want anything to do with them. So I think that relationships are kind of in that. I think that there is an expectation sometimes that people can change toxic behaviors to better themselves for their partners, but changing arbitrary things is not reasonable.
Well, it can be misguided, right? Like, what is something that is a hurtful behavior versus what is like the person who thought that the behavior was childish, right? Like watching anime was childish, thought they were being helpful by putting down Prime's friend, right? Like, oh, you should play video games and watch anime. You should be an adult, because her perception of adulting is something very, very ridiculous to me. But that's fine, whatever. Like, good for your friend Prime for getting out of that. But like, she could have very easily thought that she was being helpful. So I think like a big part of being helpful to your significant other is actually considering how harmful the behavior actually is, and probably having a professional like actually assess it, right? Like, that's what like therapy is for. That's what marriage counseling is for. Like, if you are actually going to
True.
engage in a change, you need someone to guide you down that road. If you make the assumption that something's bad, and like, it could be like if your partner is drinking excessively all the time, that could be a sign of a problem. But you still should probably have a professional help you work your way through it, because it's entirely possible to respond to it in a way that will further ingrain the behavior rather than help them walk away from the booze.
Let's go to Nine
And I
Tails and then Amanda.
okay.
Yeah, so a lot of this discussion is hitting home in ways that, like, I'm just like realizing a lot of the stuff about myself, but also hearing neurodivergent people talk about having slightly, well, very different experiences from me in relationships. It's really striking because I'm like, what they're saying is like they need to leave and like kind of reprocess things actually does apply to me. But I grew up in group homes, and what's funny about conflicts in group homes is that you never get that chance. If it's with a kid, then you're either going to fight or then you're going to have a conflict with the staff. And if it's with the staff, then it ends when they say it ends. So I am so maladapted for relationships, it's not even funny. So like when my partner and I fight, he usually like he comes off as like very neurodivergent. So like he'll like want me to leave like all of a sudden. And then like my insecurity of like abandonment issues kicks in. So like I try to like keep the discussion going and like I try to make it productive. It's like, okay, well let's like, maybe we can solve this problem instead of having me leave because a lot of our I like when I first started spending a lot of time with him, I was also homeless and in the middle of my transition. So having to go back out there with an indeterminate amount of length, maybe he'll calm down and want me to come back, maybe he won't, was pretty goddamn scary. I don't blame him for wanting me to leave because I can be pretty annoying at times, just to put it lightly. It's not self-deprecating, it's actually kind of funny to put it that way. Um, but yeah, like, so like the fact that like I kind of cling to it and stuff, it's pretty bad. Like I realize that that's harmful now, and it took me a long time to realize that because I've never had such a relationship get so close before, and I've never been so dependent on somebody before. But it's funny because like for me, it seems so weird for someone to just need me to leave all of a sudden. Like I take it like the exact opposite. Like, they're trying to like hurt me, but that's because of like my insecurity and because basically like that's basically what my mom did to me because I couldn't behave in my mind. So when someone asks me to leave, it shatters my world. And then the behaviors that follow like are very difficult for me to avoid. I'll put it that way because I know that like I don't want to pressure my partner into letting me stay there, but I really, really do wish that they would have given me a chance to like avoid that. By not like flipping 180 on me. So we both have like our problems that kind of uh, go into this thing, but they're like people. I just want to point out that like maladaptive behaviors are not always like the same as someone being like an abusive person. Because like I definitely do not want to control anybody. I don't want to manipulate anybody. I don't think I have the right to do that. But I've met people who do, who think that they can just manipulate their partners into wanting to have sex with them or into being the way that they want them. So as we talk about this, I just want to lay out that distinction. I've been having to learn a lot, like a lot of the stuff about this about myself, and was worried that like what's wrong with me? Am I abusive? And then like once I was able to relate it to like basically like this is what I didn't learn in group homes and this is what I did learn in group homes, it made a lot more sense than, this kind of like overly essentializing label.
Amanda?
Yeah, I have a couple things. So to add on Nine Tails, I will say that ADHD has high rates of rejection sensitivity and fear of abandonment as well, which is why I need to leave and process my thoughts because I have to rationalize slowly that like this person doesn't hate me. We got into an argument. He doesn't like that's why I'm stepping away is because of those same exact feelings. And so instead of wanting to fix it right there, I have to work myself backwards. So yeah, no, I was just yeah. And then the other thing is I think it was Mad Latin that was talking about like actual professional help. And I just wanted to highlight that like physical and mental emotional abuse cannot be fixed in your standard counseling and therapy sessions. So if you're experiencing that, please I guess reach out to me. Right now I don't have any resources to publicly shout out, but I will find them. But yes, counseling and therapy are not for abusive relationships.
Yeah,
Makes sense. That makes sense.
absolutely true.
But sometimes maybe you might need someone to tell you it's abusive, right?
Very, very, very good point. Yes, and I believe everyone that has access and can should be in therapy anyways. But don't use like marriage counseling as or relationship counseling to help fix abuse.
Yeah, because there, and I want to jump off of Amanda's point there because that's an excellent point. Because, when it comes to, and actually I'm jumping off of Madlad's point too, because when it comes to marriage counseling, people often think of it as like, the last step in the road before divorce. Couples are fighting, they're wanting to beat each other up, and the therapist is like having to wrestle answers out of them. And it's like, no, that's not actually what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to help couples like work through issues that they both may be having before it gets to that point. So I think that a super important point in any kind of relationship is just recognizing when, you and your partner may be having issues, and whether it's something you can work out on your own or if it's something that, a counselor needs to get involved for. So, in terms of, for example, racially discriminatory family members, you may have a conversation with your spouse and you may want to try and set those boundaries with the family. But if your spouse doesn't get it, or isn't really receptive, or, they don't really see the family's behavior as problematic, then that's something where you would need to probably jump into couples counseling for if you think that it's salvageable. Obviously, I'm not a mental health professional, so I don't have the perfect answers on that, but just from what I've witnessed, I think that that's probably a good way to go.
I was gonna piggyback off of Amanda and Kevin, some more talking about like the backing away part. Like, so for me, when I'm backing away and like I need the space to like consider what's going on, it almost feels like an actual attack when my significant other approaches me while I'm in that headspace, right? Like, so it's really funny because it's the opposite of what Ninetales is going through. So actually, I'm piggybacking with all three of you, because like Ninetales is like, you want to leave me, personal attack. Well, for me, it's like you're still talking to me about this problem that I don't want to talk about, that I already said I don't have the bandwidth for, and now I'm angry because you're not respecting the boundary I set. So it feels like a personal attack, and you have to kind of realize that this is like a thought bubble that you have that is your perception of what your partner is doing rather than what the actual objective truth is. So like that's like a big part of it too, is like not actually letting your mind define what your partner's doing, but actually like consider the fact that you want to like kind of, I guess, take the be optimistic about the reason why they're doing what it is that they're doing, unless you have, verifiable evidence that it's not in your best interests to do so. Like, to because like, there's the abusive relationship where if you're too optimistic, you just fall into a cycle of abuse. So like there's like this weird line you have to walk where you have to take your partner not for granted, the other word. You have to take your partner as literally having your back until you've got verifiable evidence that they don't have your back.
Giving them
There we go.
benefit of the doubt.
Yes, that one! Benefit of the doubt. 2 hours of sleep, guys. 2 hours of sleep. I'm sorry.
So I wanted to ask, and I guess at least two people have. Madeline, or excuse me, not Madeline. Kevin, do you have children?
No.
Okay, just wanted to ask. Should children change the equation? So
Well, they do. That's the funny part. They just do. Because there's this general desire from a grandparent to interact with their grandchild, and it can have a fantastic impact on what their outlook is. The grandchildren are almost a representation of it being too late to make any adjustments. I'm not, saying that this is, from personal experience or not, but what I'm saying though is that grandchildren are sort of, once there's people that exist, you're accepting the status quo because like the people aren't going to go away, and like the relatives that might have these problems some of them, not all of them, are going to acknowledge that they are related to these individuals. They probably care about these individuals and will cease and desist as a result of what these individuals are going through. I'm willing to believe that there's a lot of people who have some pretty backwards beliefs that will step back from those backwards beliefs once those individuals become a part of their family. This isn't universal, obviously. I know it's not universal. We literally just talked about how it's not universal. But I do think there is that possibility, and it's not like close to zero.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick that, like, first of all, I have a sister who, when she was a very young baby, went to a close adoption. So I do know the fear of not like knowing how society is going to treat someone who's kindred to you and being afraid of that. But also, like, I think it's also possible to love pets as much as you love your own kids, actually. Like, sure, they're not going to have the same experiences that kids have, and you're not going to by extension. But like, I don't know, like these pets that I consider my own, like my own children, are actually at my partner's place, and I like literally sometimes wake up or fall asleep crying because I can't control if like a fire happens or something, and I'm so terrified that there just might be a fire. It's like, okay, well, at least fires have gone down over time. But like the other thing is also like we tend to assume that just like the like the father being there, the parent being there. And this is like in a more abstract scenario where like maybe the father or the mother is like not well adapted to being a parent. Like we assume that them being there is just inherently a good thing, but like honestly, I don't want to have kids. I don't want to pass down my fucked upness. And that has nothing to do with me being trans. Just so everyone's listening doesn't be like, "Whoa, is that cringe?" Um, no, it has to do with like all of my weird social stuff and like my Asperger's and stuff like that. I'm more scared about my own sister having to have any of the things that I have to go through on top of this world we live in. Um, enough as it is, I wouldn't want to like have to worry about that in my own child. Not saying that like anybody who does is responsible for that. I just want to be super clear. Sometimes like people don't even know where they're at when these things happen. But like now that I know myself well enough to like be like, ooh, some of this is genetic. Yeah, I don't want to pass that down.
Amanda?
Yeah, just like through this conversation and like I having children and being in relationships and marriage and divorce, it's funny how much like relationships and parenting are the same. So like when you become a parent and want to learn how to parent, you typically read a whole bunch of books. I've read so many of them. And in regards to relationships and whatnot, I've also read lots of books. I read tons of books. But my point is it's always, basically just leading from a place of empathy, listening to understand, and all about respect. And those same principles apply with your children as they do with your spouse and as they do in pretty much any relationship. Um, I want to pick on Nine Tails just a little bit because it's one of my biggest pet peeves is when anyone compares children to animals.
I did not. I
No,
did
I know,
not.
no, I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm totally joking.
Okay.
But it made me think of that when people are like, oh, but especially in regards to the responsibility, more to say, because I think love, like there's parents that don't love their kids, right? There's parents that like abandoned their kids. So that's more of just the person and the person's heart. But my point is I was just teasing. But I do absolutely hate it when people compare children to pets. They are so different in regards to responsibility, financially, just in every way, like every way.
I actually really agree with the whole like relationship stuff. Like as far as like working with your child, like if you so I had a lot of experience working with kids, right? So like as a chess instructor, I was like after school vendor. I went to like all the schools in Loudoun County. Yes, that Loudoun County that's in the news. How exciting! And taught chess in all these different places. And I have like fantastic classroom management, et cetera, et cetera. But when working with your own child, a lot of that classroom management experience does not even remotely line up with how you're going to interact with your kid. Your kid wants someone they can talk to, trust, and share information with. They want to talk to you. And if you're busy trying to lay out consequences for behaviors that were negative without explaining what went wrong and why you are upset and why they need to understand why you set a boundary here, you're going to have a kid who has a hard time not making the exact same mistake over and over again and getting punished for that same mistake over and over again. A lot of this stuff is just misunderstandings for sure. Like 1,010%,
Oh,
0.56.
yeah, I mean it's absolutely like advice I was given where you don't bring your lawyer side back home to the family because that's going to just be a world of trouble. So I mean, there's always that like boundary you have to set between professional life and home life, and you got to treat situations with your family a lot differently than you do with anyone else, for sure.
Yeah. And that's not to say that you can't like, have a countdown if they're not like, following directions or like,
Yeah.
using authority if there's like an immediate need for it. So like if my kid's about to cross the street without like looking both ways, yeah, we're gonna have a little bit more authority busted out and but then afterwards, you still have to take the time to explain why you unleash the authority because they might not like that and they might be hurt by the fact that you yelled, "Hey, stop," et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or don't flood my bathroom because that's not nice. We had that
And
talk the other
honestly,
day.
that's why I'm saving this gavel. I'm being prepared.
The gavel.
It's funny that you brought up this is going way out there, but it's funny that you brought up the like crossing traffic and stuff because when my daughter was like 6, 7, she kept running across the street and I ended up spanking her and I felt like I'd done something wrong and talked to my therapist and we concluded that, as long as it's very strict circumstances and not from like a place as a parent out of frustration, like I'm not hitting my child because I'm angry and mad, right? Like simply out of protection. So pretty much if they won't stop touching a stove when it's turned on, although if they actually do touch it, they burn their hand, right? But you don't want a kid to get hit by a car to learn their lesson, right? So that, yes.
I've had like such a hard time with that. Like when my oldest is bullying my youngest, that's where I have like the hardest moment because like what happens for me, so when I was growing up, spankings happened if I did something dangerous. And I did some things that were extremely dangerous. Like I would play with electricity. I was a very curious kid, so we came up with all sorts of really interesting things to mess around with that were extremely destructive and terrible and well worth the spanking. But for me, I can't really like the idea of doing that like twists my gut somewhere, so I can't really see myself doing it. But when my oldest is bullying my youngest, that impulse is there because like she's pushing my youngest to the ground, right? Like this is actually like could hurt the youngest. It could make her have like problems. Like I remember the other day she like pushed her into a pile of Duplos, which was really sad. Like it was just she just wanted to hang out with her sister, and then her sister was like, "Get away from me, sissy," and then just shoved her. And like that impulse to spank was there, but like I can't do that without making the situation at least with my family more difficult because when I try to take the hard road and try to really lay down the consequences for her, she will rebel to the end of like the earth. Like she'll literally we'll go all the way down the path of consequences. There's like this one time I literally had all our toys in a pile, right? Like we just had like this big pile of boxes. And I'm like, all right, this is going to go to toy
Incentivize.
jail. This is going to go to toy jail. And I shoved her toy jail. It was a
I'll
storage
Absolutely.
fix this
unit.
for you.
And she was like, okay, go ahead. Just looked at me. Just didn't
Yeah,
even
no,
care. It's hard.
that's how just a little friendly advice here. Although it did end up with my son getting 7 staples in his head. But we incentivized. So like every day that was like a good day, we'd get like a little bit of beads for my daughter.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried.
And put
Okay,
it in
we
a
did that.
you put it yeah, put it in a jar. And the reason why it ended with staples is finally the jar filled up, and so we sat down to do the beads, and Avery was a year and a half and climbed up on the chair and stood up and then fell just completely down on the side of the table. But
Oh,
that was I
yeah.
thought I should explain that. But
Yeah, we did the star. We tried that too. We tried like we did stars. We did stars on paper, right? And I told her when she had like 30 stars.
eventually,
Yeah.
if your kid's as smart as I think they probably are, trust me, stars suck after a day.
Yeah, no, they do suck. They do
Yes.
like it stopped working. We tried a bunch of these things. We did puffballs in jars. So we had like these little puffballs, and they were excited about that for a bit. But really, like it comes down like regardless of whether you have like a punishment system or a reward system. Really, the key to like having kids that will follow directions is that you're actually willing to spend time with them and like talk to them and just hang out with them. Like that's half the time they're misbehaving is because they want attention. Honestly, at
Quality
least I've
time.
noticed. Yes, quality time.
Yes, quality time. Because
Yes.
you can spend like spend all at home and ignore them, or you can be home for an hour before you have to sleep and get back to work, but you spend 45 minutes of quality time with them. Totally different.
Yeah, no, it has to be like you have to like actually be interacting with them, reading to them, talking with them, listening to them. Like just saying over and over again while they tell you a story is not going to cut it.
And that applies with relationships as well. Quality time.
Absolutely. Because
I
the worst
have-
thing you can
oh,
do
sorry.
is ignore your significant other, especially when they're trying to tell you something important.
Mm-hmm. I have about 50 children. I'm just kidding. I don't. I know I'm 20 years old. I never had a child before.
I thought you were gonna like
But-
tell me about like the sperm bank incident or something.
no.
Just-
I was about to
But,
say, did you have a Glen gang?
One day. No, I think honestly, I think since just children's on the top, what we're talking about, I kind of just want one kid in the future. Hopefully, that avoids the complications of having two kids like bully each other or anything like that.
They're best friends too. They'll bully each
Of
other, but
course.
then they'll also play with each other and be really, really cute. And it's adorable watching them talk to each other. And like, the oldest one will like, say, and this star does this, da 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 da. And then the little kid will be like, yeah. And then they'll like, go back and forth. It's really cute. Not to say that your dream of one is incorrect because you can do whatever you want, obviously. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that the more the merrier, et cetera, et cetera. It's really cute.
I think
Yeah.
once everyone has a kid, if they want one kid, will or more will change once they have one kid. So whether they think they want 10 or one, once you have that one, you'll completely change your mind on that. Not always, but yeah. And
Yeah,
also
I
though,
guess
there are
yeah.
kids that are much easier and much harder. Like my firstborn, hardest baby ever, colic, didn't stop crying till 10 months. Like I don't remember her first steps. Like none of all I remember is tears the first 10 months. And then so thought for sure the second one super easy. Super
Mhm.
easy.
Apparently, I was chill when I was a kid. I didn't. When we were at the grocery store, I just I didn't try to grab nothing. I was just chilling.
Well, we haven't had grocery store visits in a while, obviously, but when we did those, oldest would just grab everything and just put it like in the seat, whatnot. Yeah, very lame. Lots of boundaries we
Well-
had to set there.
What was your guys' process for naming your kids? Because for me, the best name I can
Ooh.
think of, I kind of want to name the kid like Nathan Jr. You know what I'm saying? Because that's like the best name I know. So
So there's boundary issues there actually.
true.
Because we couldn't even
As
agree
a
on a
junior,
last
I'm
name.
offended.
Ooh, Junior.
I still think the one having the baby should have a little more weight.
That's true.
I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I bake that in by default. However, there are some serious issues with naming that I have not gotten over yet. For example, my youngest so her name is Cassidy, right? Cassidy Shireen. That's her first name, and then her middle name, whatever. And there are 3 different versions of the same vowel spelled differently. So like there's the Y in Cassidy. There is the Shireen, right? That's the I and then the double E, and it's all the same vowel, but they. All right, we're digressing. I'm sorry.
Okay,
We can go
I
back.
did want. Sorry.
You already lost me.
Yeah, so I did want to get back to the topic at hand. So, I wanted to talk about sex and
Hell yeah, brother.
Prime, is it that time? Do we need to sit down and talk about the birds and the bees?
I think
I've been waiting
What
my whole
is
life
this?
for this.
I don't know what anyone's talking about.
I know we're sex. Okay, I'm talking about compromising within a relationship within okay, I'm looking at Sunny in chat and she's like roasting me like sorry. So within the bedroom, right, people may want different things, right? Like you may have someone who you otherwise love very, very much, but they like, okay, one way that can be problematic is simply having your sex drive, right, in terms of your libido, right? One person can have a very high libido, one can have a normal, I shouldn't say normal, but like a lower libido, right? And well, like it's reasonable for for the person with a higher libido to want to be with their partner, right? And it's also reasonable for the person with a lower libido to not want to not be in the mood and want to do other things, maybe have intimacy in a different form, right? One person could the intimacy could be more in a physical form. Others could be like in I like give you gifts. I like doing something for you, right? These are all things that can happen within a relationship. So how much should you compromise here?
Yeah, so boundaries are are a thing in the bedroom, especially, I would say. Like, but I also would say that the bedroom is probably the place where I have the hardest time probably enforcing boundaries, because like I don't know, like toxic masculinity, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's very easy to find yourself in a situation you're not comfortable in, but then being like, yes, in society, I'm supposed to have sex. I'm supposed to like this no matter what. And then you proceed to engage regardless of misgivings. That's definitely happened to me multiple occasions, I guess. So yeah, you should try to establish boundaries for sure. But I can definitely acknowledge the difficulty in doing them.
What exactly was the question?
So the question is like we're going back to the whole compromise topic, right? So it's the same thing. We just bring it to a different area, and in terms of like the bedroom, and if it changes anything when it comes to compromise, because I think people here are pretty willing to compromise with a partner, but does that change when it involves your body? You know, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So are you asking if people, like if someone suddenly can't have sex, then whether we would leave or not?
No, I didn't ask that.
Okay, that's what I'm like.
No,
I'm really confused.
No. I'll try it again. So different people show their affection in different ways, right? I'll put it on the table. I like physical affection. I like touch. I like to hug. I like to kiss. I like other stuff. But like all those things, right? Are ways that I enjoy showing affection to my partner. But other people, and just as validly, don't. I mean, they'll may want to have intercourse, have sex, right? But that might not be their primary focus. And in fact, if another partner shows their love only through physical intimacy, they might feel used, right? You know, like, oh, you just want me for my body. It's like, well, no, I'm actually just really want to be close to you, right? And this is how I do things. But the other partner may want to like there are people who like doing service for their partners, right? Like how I show love and how I receive love is that you help me out with things, right? You help me like if I've got chores to do, you'll be there to assist, and it shows me that you really care, right? If I'm like super busy, if I have like my own business or something, right, and I need things done, I don't even have to ask you, and it gets done, right?
Oh, wait, hold on. Nope. I got a little problem with the not asking thing.
Okay.
No, there are situations,
Same.
yes, when in a relationship, there are situations where being asked to do something is perfectly acceptable, but there are also times where someone shouldn't have to ask you to do the dishes if the dishes are there. We're not your mother.
She is. She's speaking from experience. I'm gonna just tell you that right now. So, anyway, but yeah, so that's my point. So that's what I actually want to discuss, right? So, in these situations, right, where there's clearly a mismatch in expectations, how much should you compromise, right? Yeah. So we'll start from there, and we'll like maybe drill down.
So it depends on. Oh, go ahead, Nathan.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, I am horny. I am extremely horny. I'm just kidding. I'm not. I am not.
All right.
I am. I'm not currently horny, just to be clear. But
Oh,
I do.
Christ.
I do like that stuff. Okay. The person I dated in the past, and you know, to be honest, the person I want to date in the future, they're single now, so you know, it could happen. But they're probably asexual, so that adds a layer of complication. That wasn't really. It wasn't a problem when we were dating before, but I can imagine if it's a long-term thing, that might be a bit of a problem. Now, my thoughts on that, because I've thought about it. You know, I think I'm not an expert on you know, asexuals. Do they fuck eventually at some point?
So for some
This is
asexuals,
so.
oh, I don't know where you're going with this, but like in some asexuals, they don't want any sort of like sexual content. They're not interested in it. Others will have sexual content. They're fine with it for their partners, right? Like, okay, this is some sort of level of intimacy that you like, and I'll provide that for you. But like, it's not like something that's on their agenda, right? So
Yeah.
that's my understanding. If I'm
So
yeah.
I'm just gonna
Yeah,
throw something in there real quick. So Nathan, just to clarify, you're dated a person before who was asexual. They're single now. You want
We-
to date them again.
we don't know if they were. They just kind of
Okay.
speculated they might be, but they just were never into that sexual shit growing up in puberty and all
Cool.
that shit.
So you want to date them again,
Yes.
and you're wondering. Okay. I'm gonna suggest, and this is just my opinion here. I'm not a relationship expert, whatever things. No, don't do it. Just find someone else. Like you already dated them, it didn't work. You want the humpy, and they don't want the humpy. You just need to no, don't do it. Don't do it.
He's-
Don't do it.
my thoughts on that. I understand that perspective.
don't do it.
Absolutely. But ultimately, you know,
Just don't do it.
I like the idea of being horny and shit, but
Nope.
love
Don't
comes
do it.
first. Love comes
No,
first.
that's not love.
horn-
That's not
I
love.
I like the horny, but the horny isn't that important to me. But also, we dated like in high school. You know, people can change over time and evolve, and I don't think we were rushing into doing anything sexual.
So
You know,
I resent that.
yeah.
I resent what you just said. Saying that the love come first, like implying that you know, showing physical love is not love. Physical intimacy is not real intimacy, right?
We showed physical intimacy. I don't know if she was ever like, you know, okay, this is weird as fuck to talk about, but like she
I
just
mean, I
wasn't
guess
into
the
like the
panel's all about your
sexual
sex
stuff.
life now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was gonna go in a completely
yeah,
different direction.
yeah, but hold on, I just
Nathan,
gotta,
you've opened the Pandora's box. It's too late to close it.
No,
we must talk about your horny.
Yeah, I just gotta like push back on that. There's all kinds of ways to show intimacy, right? And they're all valid. Now, if you're saying that in your relationship that physical intimacy was not primary, that's fine. That's okay, right? I have no judgments for that. And if you two were happy with the formation of a relationship, that's great. But to imply that physical intimacy is somehow a lesser is my problem. You know, and for
Yeah.
other people, if you know, like they show their intimacy by fucking, that's cool, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah. So to clarify, like I'm not trying to put down physical intimacy at all. Like that wasn't my point.
Are you looking
But-
for relationship advice?
Not really.
You want some.
All right, so let's move on.
But I will say this. You know, I didn't mean to put down physical intimacy at all, and it definitely matters, but I'm just gonna do like some crazy shit and see what happens. I'm gonna throw shit on the wall and see if it sticks. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, moving on from that. What was my point of bringing that up? Oh yeah, my question was, so asexual people in general, they fuck, right? At times, if like depending.
I think you're asking like about individual people and their preferences. Like it really depends on the person, and going into a relationship, clearly there are some boundaries you have in regards to needing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in this situation, is there a way you can get those needs met without disrespecting or lying to the other girl? Would she be okay in a non-monogamous relationship?
Yeah, and
That is. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, yeah, that is definitely questions to consider in the future. I mean, if we got back together, she knows how I be with that shit. So we would both have to like, we both have to plan for the future. But
So
I think we communicate well.
So having
I
boundaries.
think you're very young. No, I'm just
So having boundaries is like,
teasing.
just because you've established your boundary and you're able to communicate with someone does not mean necessarily that you're going to be able to make a relationship work. If you really, really like to hump and your partner really, really, really doesn't like to hump, and your efforts to continuously hump violate their boundaries and their desire not to hump violates your boundaries, there's going to be friction, and
Yeah.
pepper on those boundaries to the point where you guys start resenting each other. So my suggestion here again is no, but you know what? What was the?
I think I think I misrepresented myself in the beginning. I'm not that horny, to be honest.
Okay,
I'm not like jerk off every day.
It doesn't
horny,
matter,
okay?
Nathan. No one cares. It's fine.
I was about, one of my chatters, Nathan, said that you should check out the Trevor Project about information on asexual peeps, but that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
So sorry, Mad Lad. What did you mean by like you just said no, right? So like what I interpret that when you said that's like, oh well, in that situation where there's two people who have a vastly different expectations in the bed, that you should end it. Is that what you meant?
No, I mean like just don't start it. Like if you
Oh,
are
don't
not.
start it.
Yeah, like there's no like your emotional investment will only get deeper the longer you pursue a relationship. And I mean, I guess if you're able to have a relationship and let it go easily, then that's one thing. For me, starting a relationship is like a very big investment. It's very, very important to me. And I would want to be with someone who sees eye to eye with me in a lot of different ways prior to even starting the relationship, because it would be very painful to end the relationship because there were clear boundary issues that were just not going to work out. So whenever there's a boundary that I feel is insurmountable, I am avoiding the relationship. We talked about this a little bit with the politics thing too, right? Like if should you date someone who is conservative if you're like really, really liberal? And the answer was, well, if politics matter to you, probably not, right? Because you're gonna have a very hard time working out like your relationship boundaries and values, et cetera, et cetera.
So I think if your expectations are wildly mismatched, then you're probably right. But I think people get in relationships all the time, and this is what we talked about actually last time again during that conservative discussion, right? Marrying a conservative, is that it's the deepness of like the chasm, right? Like how big this chasm is between you two may not be clear from the very beginning, right? It could be that, especially since things like libido isn't static, right? So it could be that when you first meet, you guys are having a sex life that both of you find enjoyable, right? But then afterwards, for various reasons, right? It could be just aging. It could be medication. It could be trauma that someone suffers, right? Then these things can shift, right? Like how people want to be physical with each other. And so in that case, it's like, well, what do you do?
So this
and-
is like a really tough one,
Mm.
right? Because like you've already put in the emotional investment. You've been together for a long time, presumably, and things aren't working out the way you want. And I mean, this goes back to the therapy and the marriage counseling, right? Like trying to figure out if there's a way to work out your differences and try to make it happen. But to Amanda's point, like if it's like, you know, if your partner isn't actually able to meet all your needs, it is also possible to see if there's a way to like find someone else who does, and it's not necessarily going to have a bad impact on your relationship, right? So like one thing that you could do is explore that aspect as well. That notwithstanding, it depends on like how much of it depends on like how much of a deal breaker that type of thing would be. Not just like the finding someone else who can meet your needs, but also whether or not your personal needs that you don't get to have anymore is enough more valuable to you than the emotional bond you've already established. So like if you really prioritize that emotional bond and you can, you know, put away your sex or the affection or whatever, then by all means continue it. But if it's actually something that you're going to resent your partner for on a long-term basis and there's no resolution, then that emotional bond will start like fraying quite quickly and the relationship will end probably on bad terms anyway. That's the way I would see it.
So, okay. And you did a lot of good stuff there. But
Thanks.
I think,
go ahead, Amanda. You go first.
yeah, I think the key to having like good, healthy relationships to avoid all of this to begin with is I had it. Now I don't anymore. It was going to be some great advice.
That's
I
going to
swear.
be amazing, I'm sure.
Yes,
Good,
it
healthy
was.
relationship. Okay. Well, you
Wow.
let me know as soon as you think of it again. But now I think we're all doomed to failure and divorce. Now that Amanda has not shared this wonderful piece of information with us. But so, okay. So
I know.
Okay.
Yes. So to know what your boundaries are, to know what things, basically just know yourself, right? And you can also be in relationships and learn about yourself, right? That's normal. I think also setting like, especially, you know, past like high school and when you're getting into dating, just know what you want. Like, are you looking long term? So then you can have certain discussions more towards the beginning, or if things develop naturally, then at that time. But yeah, so just knowing yourself and knowing what the other person expects.
So, but okay. But first of all, what someone expects, I say the term first
You're
of all
supposed to first
oftentimes.
say that was amazing advice. Thank you for saving all
Yeah,
of the.
yeah, you did it. You did it.
That
The
was
marriage
amazing
rate,
advice.
the divorce rate's going to plummet. We're going to get this information out to the world. Nice work, Amanda. But
After hearing that, I'm not sure what divorce is.
okay, so there's lots of places I'm going to take this. Okay, I want to ask a few questions. So, like when Matt Latin was talking, right? Embedded into some of his assumptions there was that if there was going to be compromise, it would be on the person with the higher libido, saying it's, you know, it'll go without some sex, right? But is it ever would it ever be valid to expect within a compromise situation that the person with less libido would you know, do a bit more?
Do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be like it depends on how much, like it depends on each individual and like how, like if you're like, so if it's an honest like, hey, this is what I want, this is what you want, is there a way we can meet in the middle, and it's like all voluntary and there's no like manipulation attached to it, whatnot, it's totally fine, right? Like sure, like I don't necessarily want to do this, but I love you, so fine, whatever. But if there's manipulation involved, if there's pressure involved, if there's like a bad feeling after the fact,
Well, there's always going to be
then
some sort of pressure, right? And so, a situation like this, that's like touches really close, like there's gonna be a pressure to continue the relationship. Like I value this person, right? And I'm trying to save this issue, so there was gonna be some sort of pressure. I get what you're saying about coercion, certainly, but a pressure, there'll be a pressure
to
there.
have sex specifically. It might not even be about the relationship. Like the relationship might even be an aside here. It could be
But-
just like pressuring
but-
the person to have additional like sex that they're not ready to have.
But I'm saying that for the relationship, right? For that relationship, like to save that relationship, if you think that your partner is unhappy, right, with your sex life, and that could be unhappy for lots of reasons. Right now we're just talking about the amount of sex, right? But if you think your partner isn't happy, period, and you're a functioning adult, you know how these things tend to go. If sex life is not where it is, so you may reasonably think, well, this person might leave me, right? Now they don't have to say they're going to leave you, right? They don't have to even imply they're going to leave you, but the very fact that you understand that they're unhappy means that there is some sort of pressure. If you want to continue the relationship, then there is some sort of pressure. So there's no,
True.
so there's no like, I don't.
I guess.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm gonna invent some terms here.
Mm.
I'm gonna say there's such a thing as the natural pressure, which is what you're describing, like maintaining the relationship, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to suggest that there is a intentional pressure that is being placed upon the person that's separate from the natural pressure. So the natural pressure is like everything you described, like I want to please my partner, so I will do more sex than I would like. And then the intentional pressure would be the partner saying, here, let's just do this. Let's just do this. Let's just do this. Let's just do this. I want to do this. Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? Can we please? Can we please do this? And that would be the difference. So like I would say that the intentional pressure would be the part that is like completely unhealthy and destructive, corrosive, etc. Well, the natural pressure is something that you can definitely take into consideration. Also, therapists, marriage therapists, and or couples counseling is pretty good for that too.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like any kind of sexual relationship, you have to communicate with your partner, your spouse, whomever you're with, and you have to accommodate each other. I think it's a mutual thing. So there's always that I forgot what the terms are already. I'm so sorry, Mad Lad.
Intentional pressure and
Natural?
natural pressure is what I went with. If there's an actual real term for this, and there's like some sex therapists in the chat who want to correct my terminology, please do. I don't know what I'm talking about.
And please let yourself be known. I would love to talk to a sex therapist. That sounds amazing. But go ahead, like Kevin.
No, I was just gonna say, first of all, Mad Lad, if you're inventing terms on the fly, then I think you're ready to get your law license. Congratulations. And then second of all, honestly, I think that there's always going to be some kind of like natural pressure in a relationship to please, your spouse, your partner. There shouldn't be that kind of like coercion to have sex, but you need to communicate with each other to make sure that you can really fulfill each other's needs. Whether it be trying something different or letting them know like what you like and what you don't like, so there's continued happiness and enjoyment there in the process. Because at the end of the day, like communication is what makes any kind of relationship work, whether it be in the sexual way, whether it be in shutting down racist asshole relatives kind of way, just or the normal day-to-day functioning of a relationship.
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree. I was gonna say I was gonna add something to this discussion where before Nathan, you were talking before you started talking about how horny you were. What was the last what was the premise on that? Like why were you talking about that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, I was just wondering, like, how does a person that is not asexual potentially date a asexual person? Because if everything else in the relationship is frankly good, and I guess we'll get into the conversation. If everything else is good, communication, humor, all that good stuff, enjoying being around each other, but you might be you're like a regular, you're like everybody else. You like sex, but then a person does not have sex. How does someone, and I'm sure asexual people exist and have dated people that aren't asexual, how do they
Yeah.
usually handle that?
But and yeah, that kind of like feeds into this too. Like, there's definitely situations. I have a few friends who are asexual, and when they talk about it, it's not like something they're necessarily. I mean, sex happens anyway, from what
Yeah,
I've gathered, but
I
it's
had a feeling.
but it's not like all the time, and it depends on the personality, I would say, right?
Yeah.
So like, there's
Yeah.
one who's like very like, cool, like, all right, I guess we're gonna do this now. This is like, it's not like there's like an intent to have this happen, more so than like it just seems like natural for this to occur in the moment type thing.
Yeah.
And there's another person
Yeah.
who's like, just don't touch me, please.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm the best person to be giving this out information, but there's plenty of resources online. But like, there are some people who don't want sex, period. Some people who will tolerate sex, and then others who like don't want relationships, period. Right? They're like completely aromantic, as well. So they would just rather be alone and not have to deal with any of that. So, but in any case, whatever. I wanted to. Okay, so basically, I'm trying to understand like the limits of what you all think is a healthy compromise, because it seems it's I I hear that it's like it's easy for people to tell people you should go without, but it, like, I don't hear people say like, well, someone should like step up and do more, right? Now, I'm not saying one way or the other how it should go, but I'm just trying to explore what you all think, right? I think, if to get maybe right to the point, I think maybe people feel differently about this, as opposed to other compromises, right? Like let's say like taking out the trash, right? Someone wants you to do more, other one wants to do less, right? But like in that situation, I mean, I imagine a lot of you would say, well, if there's a big problem in the relationship, you should like step up and do more chores if your partner wants you to do more chores, right? But when it comes to sex, it's not like, well, step up and do more sex.
So
But like,
what's actually interesting here,
but I imagine that's because it's a part of your body, like you're sharing your body, right? It's about your bodily autonomy, which I think is fair. But like, I just want to get to the point where we are understanding that we are making special exceptions, right? And again, it could be fine. It could be valid exceptions, but we're making special exceptions as to what we expect in terms of compromise. But sorry, Nathan. Sorry, Matt Ladden.
so I was gonna say, we don't actually even have to talk about asexuality here. We can actually, I think, all relate to a time where we just don't want to have sex, right? Like, so if we had a partner that was interested in having sex to the point where we could not possibly have any more sex, that would be like, or we wouldn't necessarily feel like having sex. I think we could like take that mentality and then try to apply, like, what would we do if we had a partner who, I mean, I'm just gonna say it, they're insatiable, they want to have sex all the time, you're trying to do stuff and they always want to hook up.
If you had Nathan as a boyfriend, got it. Yeah.
Right,
No.
especially Nathan as a boyfriend, especially. But like, yeah, so if you had like that type of situation going on, I mean, I could definitely see myself, just, well, I mean, I already mentioned that my boundaries are like super lax here, and I'm terrible at enforcing all the feelings I have on this department. I could definitely see myself having more sex than I would care to engage in for the sake of pleasing my partner. Like, absolutely 100%.
Is it okay? So, next question on this: is it okay to ask, like, for an open relationship, right? So you're in the bedroom for whatever reason, and might not just be libido, maybe something else that you want, right? That your partner, for whatever reason, is not going to provide, right? So people, I think, would say, I think a lot of people in chat would say that if you wanted more sex than your partner wanted, and that was a problem, then like, they shouldn't have to be expected to like give their body over to you, right? If they're not comfortable. Well, then it's also reasonable to say, well, let's expand our relationship. Or is that too much, right? To like, if you can't provide, then allow me to look elsewhere.
I think it depends on the people in the relationship. If that's, I think a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable with that. But if you are people that are comfortable, then you have the right to do it. Um, I think most likely in most cases, people aren't gonna like that. So I think for the people with higher libido, um, just chill. I mean,
I
jerk off
mean,
or something.
no,
I don't
like, you
know.
can't actually
I
say
disagree
that,
with that.
though.
Yeah, go, Madeline, you go
I
first.
kind of very disagree with it. So, like,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like,
And you kind of have to accommodate there.
yeah, like, so there's a lot of accommodation, and it also depends on like the strength of your emotional bond with the person, right? So, like, if someone that
She's
you love,
returned.
if someone you love says, "Hey, I love you, but I also want to have sex with this person over here," like, you have to figure out like what rules you want to abide by in this situation, and you also need to carefully consider how you're going to feel, and maybe you do need a counselor of some kind, a relationship therapist, to help you make these sorts of decisions and have this conversation. Really, honestly, it's just having an open dialogue and not fronting one way or another about how you feel. And yeah, if you're uncomfortable with it, then I guess you set your boundary, they set theirs, and you see if it works out, right? But I don't think it's fair to say, "Ah, well, just calm down and jerk it." Like, I mean, maybe that is an alternative you can suggest to your partner, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's like ethically okay that you insist on it, right? That's still like some form of pressure, and you're trying to pressure and push their boundaries in a direction that's not cool.
I guess if the boundary of the person is like, so like let's say someone asks like, could we have an open relationship? Could I have sex with this person? And the person really just doesn't want it. Um, I think that person in the relationship does have a right, and they're not really in the wrong to say, I wouldn't be able to handle that, and I
Yeah.
don't want to do that. So, I think and I say most people, I think, because yeah, I think that's the situation most people would probably find themselves in,
We
and
live in a society
yeah.
that is
I
particularly monogamous in nature, partly because it's like kind of pushed on us societally. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that either. I would say there's a spectrum of individuals that may or may not. Amanda was going to say something. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think that anyone can leave a relationship or decide something in a relationship at any time, and those boundaries should be respected, whether they're the boundaries make them an asshole or not, or they're not willing to compromise. But I think, yeah, I don't know the way that was worded. I just wanted to make sure that yes, anyone can leave or stay in a relationship at, not always. We have, domestic violence situation where it's much harder, but like in the general scheme of things, yeah, walk away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like at that
and
point, at least to me, that would be a situation where walking away would probably be brought up, right, in the conversation. But you also don't want to use it in a way to, again, pressure or force the person to then decide this.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think for the person that like asked to do like the open relationship stuff, if they feel strongly that they want a polyamorous, did I say that right?
Polyamorous.
Polyamorous. If they want a polyamorous relationship, if they feel real strongly for that, then just like the person who says they don't want that, they have just as much of a right. And both of them they both have the option to leave if they can't find a compromise. But I do think if someone finds themselves in a situation like that, you should definitely ask your partner, and if you want to stay with that partner, maybe try to find some sort of compromise. But if you just can't do that, if their boundaries are just too much for you, then it's completely reasonable for you to leave. But it's a tough situation. Definitely, in all of these situations, though, handling that communication, probably the best for every direction.
I have a kind of a question though. Like, let's say that sex is something that you need to form like intimacy and that's why you need it, then wouldn't that relationship be somewhat doomed no matter what, because whoever they're having sex with eventually would likely form some intimate bond? Or would they just be
I don't
finding
think
random girls at every night at the bar type of thing, right? Like,
you can have like a steady. I think you can definitely have like a steady relationship with someone. Like you could have like your initial significant other
Yeah.
who you will occasionally have sex with, and then you'll have like your new significant other that you occasionally have sex with, and love them both and appreciate them both, and not
but what
um
if the girl's only okay with one form of that? What if she doesn't want you to go have feelings with somebody else and just wants you to
well,
go,
then there's going to be some very complicated
right?
questions you have to answer.
Yeah.
So
That's where that's where the couples counseling comes in, I would say, probably on some
so,
level.
okay. Yeah, I want to tackle this. I think it's an interesting question you're asking, Amanda. And from my understanding, so I was in an open relationship too, but like it didn't. Um, are so these can come in many forms, right? So you can have an open relationship that is closed, right? So basically, right, you like you have yourself and you have your primary partner, but then you could one or both of you, right, could go out to meet another person, right? And that other person, you get something else from them, right? Whether it be sexual intimacy or maybe like some other form of intimacy. So maybe like your primary partner is great with the physical intimacy, right? But like there's something else that is missing there, right? And you go to this other person, right? And you find it there. So in any case, it's closed though, right? So it's not like you're going to the bar every night and finding someone new, right? And your partner might be aware of this third person, right? Like by aware I mean like they know them, like they might meet them, or your partner might say, your primary partner might say that I don't want to know anything about them. You know, you're sharing this part of yourself with them, and it's okay. I'll give you permission to do that, but I don't want to be any closer to that situation. Right? All those configurations are valid. And then of course there is where like everything's open, and you can find whoever you want, and then maybe lay down ground rules as to your interactions with them, right? Like in terms of like what could be done in the bedroom, like protection, all that, like all those things can be a part of it. But in any case, when you're talking about Amanda, you're talking about the problem with intimacy. Yeah, like I think part of this would just have to be an assumption that okay, you aren't providing something that this person wants, right? You've acknowledged that much, and this primary relationship is so valuable that they're actually trying to save it, right? That they don't want to give this up, right? Whatever this is, and they've decided this might be a solution, one of many, where they can go out and get what they're missing, but still keep whatever is important to you. Like, especially like you said, kids change everything. What if you have kids already by that point, And you don't want to break up. You want to raise your family. Otherwise, you're happy, wonderful parents who love each other, but something is missing. So one of these parents goes out to find a third person, right? We just have to. I mean, part of it is just accepting that okay, they're doing this. That doesn't mean they don't love me any less,
I mean, I think that's like the key is like making sure that it's clear that like the primary. I mean, at a certain point, you probably won't necessarily be able to call it the primary relationship, depending on how things work or whatnot. But like, we'll call it the initial relationship. Like at some point, like you do need to make it clear that your initial relationship is important and valuable, and like that's why you're still in it, right? If you don't make that clear and you're having sex with others, then it could definitely lead to things kind of going kablooey. Like I actually lived with a polyamorous couple, like as root or housemates or whatnot, and it was this really interesting situation where the wife wanted to explore polyamory, and she picked up someone at the bar, and someone was a unicorn, so they were bisexual and interested in having sex with both partners, and they were a three-way couple for a long time. But there were actually a lot of problems. Actually, the wife actually had a lot of issues that weren't necessarily being addressed. They didn't go to counseling for it or whatnot. So the situation exploded, and then she called herself a unicorn. I don't know if that's actually like an okay term to use now that I'm thinking about it, by the way. So if it's not okay term to use, someone correct me so I never say it again. Thanks. But the third and the husband actually stayed together for a number of years afterwards, while the husband and the wife actually got divorced. And they did almost everything right. The only thing they didn't do was have a professional help them, and that might be, the key to making some of these things work. Honestly, like a lot of rules and having guided help when you explore these questions that are going to be hard for you to evaluate because they're very close to you and having a very strong emotional impact.
Well, I guess I think it really I think a situation like this, I mentioned this earlier, but like really emphasizes the importance of communication, because like if one party of the situation just feels like a slight uncomfortableness with it, it could ruin like a whole relationship, and I think these relationships have value to it. So, um, you know, for me personally, I don't think I would, and I don't think I would be comfortable in that situation. You know, um, and I'm curious, like what you guys would think for your own lives, if something like that would be comfortable, and if not, how would
You
you
touched
guys
my
go about it?
nachos.
I was just gonna not completely answer your question, but
Understandable.
so yes,
Yeah,
I think
that's like a
no,
weird thing.
no, I was trying to hold on to my thought, so I wasn't exactly listening to it. So you'll have to, but now I probably am gonna forget it. But no, so yes, communication, respect, and self-respect. Those three are
Mm-hmm.
very important. So sorry, I wanted to say that, and I was not able to listen to your
Yeah,
question as I
no,
was
it's okay.
repeating it.
I think those three things you just listed are the most important things, and if you have those things, you'll be fine. As complicated as relationships are, if you have those things for each other, you'll be able to run through a relationship well. If you guys aren't going well, then it'll be more of a respectful breakup or separation. Those three things are so fundamentally important, and I think a lot of people lack it. So like when going into relationships, I would suggest for people to stay conscious and look out for things.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, that's like I don't know how comfortable I would be answering like
Yeah, no problem.
a specific question, like what my boundaries are in this term. But basically, I have very flimsy boundaries that I would easily, again, not to emphasize the point, but I'm not good at establishing them. So, oops. So I could definitely. Oh no, that's coffee. Everything's fine.
Don't spill the lifeblood.
No, everything's fine. So I feel like I was gonna say something very very important. Damn it. It was, yeah. So like my boundaries aren't particularly and always enforced in this just generally speaking. So I feel like if I was in a situation where my partner had some specific requests, I would have to work really really hard at enforcing how I felt on the situation to begin with. Um, yeah. Okay. I had something else
Yeah,
to add, but it's gone.
I was just gonna say that I've always thought that society and especially dating standards were those rules were so strange to me in my head. Which I learned was a sign of autism and ADHD, by the way.
I don't
So
know if they are really weird though.
True.
I was gonna say like they are for me. I think they're extremely weird. Like the number of situations that I was pressured into because of what the rules were. Like I wanted to have sex with someone, so I have to date them first, so it's okay to have sex. Like that was like, the initial like big lie I was taught, right? So we would get into like I got into like some horrible relationships because that was like the that was like the premise on how this is supposed to work. You get into a relationship, things are going to go great, and then you're going to have sex and everything's fine. But in the reality, you will enter an abusive relationship. You're not going to be thinking about the abuse you're experiencing because, you're hoping to have sex. And then it happens, and then you realize you're in a horrible place and you can't get out, and you've already invested like months of your life and it's bad, right?
Yeah, there could definitely be
sorry.
toxic expectations when you go into any kind of relationship. So I think it's just about, going into something for the right reason. And, you know, I mean, and Amanda, I totally vibe with that as a fellow ASD person. Like dating expectations and dating rules just go right out the window because they make no sense to me. I haven't had to worry about that for a while, but still, it's just like, I'm sorry, what are these conventions? What am I signing up for?
Yeah.
That's what it
And
is,
like
though. It
even
is.
and it
You're
even
signing up
like sorry, like even in regards to like looks, and I guess I've never questioned this or until just now, but like uh, that all seems dumb to me as well. Like people's attractiveness and what they consider attractive, and like um yeah.
Do you think? Oh,
Yeah.
hold on. I want to examine that. Are you saying that it doesn't make sense to uh, at all consider the way a person looks when they're deciding who
No,
to
like
date?
I know who's attractive, and like like in my head, like who I find like is a pretty person. But it has nothing to do with dating.
Okay, so you what's the term for this? Is it pansexual? But so anyway, I'll just describe. So were you saying that when you are deciding on who to date, that um like their attractiveness plays no like their physical attractiveness, however you might define that, doesn't play a part. It's instead their personality and how you find that they mesh.
I guess I've never looked into anything like going into dating. So
Sorry, what?
I guess
What?
like I've never like been out on the lookout to like get into a relationship. It just naturally has happened, and um yeah, so that question also doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Um.
I think just to, and I'm so sorry, Nathan.
No, it's no problem. No problem.
Just to, I think that from like I think from a practical perspective, attraction obviously plays some role in whether you want to speak with someone and, form some kind of relationship with them, because people can be aesthetically pleasing to you and that draws you towards them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, your first thought is to smash them. You may want to try and like form a deeper connection with them, but it really just depends on the person and what their intentions are, really.
I'll say I've been scarred by the term aesthetically pleasing. Going
Sorry.
back to that, no, it's fine. It's fine. Like, this was like probably the most unpleasant relationship I ever had. I was someone's test boyfriend because they had not come out yet.
Ooh.
And they wanted to see if dating women was a thing for them. So they would always say that they found me aesthetically pleasing as like a way of like suggesting that they could have been attracted to me if they were straight or whatnot. And yeah, don't do that, by the way. If
Yeah.
you're
Mhm,
if you're listening, like using someone as your test boyfriend for that is not actually okay. It's like unless you put it out in the front, right? Like you say, hey, I'm not actually interested in you should probably run, but like do you want to be my test boyfriend? And like give the person that option. Don't like date them on false pretenses. It's not cool.
Oh, that's really
That
rough.
sucks.
Yeah, that's
But I mean, it's fine. Like whatever, growth, development, etc., etc. Like
yeah.
whatever, everything's fine. But yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God damn, dude.
I think the discussion that was just, like bouncing
At
off
least they
like the
weren't
previous
racist.
discussion.
It's all good.
True. Bouncing off the previous discussion, I think, you know, I probably have like OCD like when it comes to like germophobia shit, right? But overall, when it comes to other things, I'm fairly like neurotypical. But like dating somebody that isn't neurotypical, I think, is a unique experience that people gotta like when they're getting into those relationships, they gotta understand and be more understanding of the person. So, for example, a friend of mine, um, he's he we don't know if he has like something like autism, but we kind of just assume because my autistic friends just like really like see a lot of signs. He just was homeless back in the day, so he might have not been able to get a doctor's appointment when he was young. But in his relationship, we could see where he struggles. He wasn't getting like the humor of the other person. And like it was hard to like tell them like might want to chill out with the jokes. Not like to the friend, but like to their partner. Um but like I think when you find yourself dating someone that's not neurotypical, or you are neurotypical or not neurotypical and you're dating somebody, another example of why communication matters so much is because you need to understand any potential things that could lead to misunderstandings or problems. Well, yeah, I'm not the most qualified person here to talk about not being neurotypical, but like I don't mean to sound like I know I'm an expert, but the person that I dated had like either ADD or ADHD, which really didn't make much complications, but like I'm assuming like it kind of hindered some of our communication.
Oh, it
At
makes a lot of complications.
Oh yeah.